Not every smile is born from love, some smiles hide daggers. In the bustling marketplace of Adansi, where traders called out their wares and the air smelled of fresh pepper and smoked fish, there lived two young women who everyone believed were closer than sisters. Their names were Oma and Efua. Oma was a weaver. Her fingers danced across threads like butterflies over flowers, creating cloth so beautiful that people came from distant towns just to buy her work. The patterns she wove told stories, stories of the sun, the moon, the rivers, and the wisdom of ancestors. When Oma walked through the marketplace, people greeted her with warmth. Children ran to touch the hem of her wrapper, hoping some of her talent would rub off on them. Efua was a potter. She shaped clay into vessels that could hold water without leaking for many seasons. Her pots were strong and useful, and people needed them. But when Efua walked through the marketplace, people nodded politely and moved on. Her pots were good, yes, but they did not make anyone stop and stare in wonder. The two women had grown up together, learning their craft side by side under the same great Iroko tree where the master craftspeople taught their skills. They had laughed together as girls, shared their first heartbreaks, and celebrated when each completed her first masterpiece. Everyone who saw them said, "Look at Oma and Efua. That is what true friendship looks like." And Efua smiled. She smiled so wide and so often when she was with Oma that no one could doubt her joy. She smiled when Oma sold 10 cloths in one day. She smiled when the chief's wife commissioned a special wrapper from Oma for the harvest festival. She smiled when young women asked Oma to teach them her weaving secrets. But what no one saw, what Oma herself did not see, was what happened behind that smile. At night, when Efua returned to her small compound, she would sit alone grinding pepper for her soup, and the smile would fall from her face like a mask dropping to the ground. She would think about Oma's success, and her heart would twist like a snake coiling around itself. Why does everyone praise her so much? Efua would mutter, pounding the pepper harder than necessary. We learned together. We started together. Yet she shines like the sun while I am just there. Efua began to notice things she had never paid attention to before. She noticed how people's eyes lit up when Oma spoke. She noticed how the other traders in the marketplace would call Oma over just to chat, while they only approached Efua when they needed to buy a pot. She noticed how Oma's laughter seemed to make everyone around her laugh too, while her own jokes often fell flat. The poison of envy is like a tiny seed. At first, you barely notice it. But if you water it with bitter thoughts and feed it with comparison, it grows roots that strangle everything good in your heart. One day, a wealthy trader from across the great river came to the marketplace. He was looking for gifts to take back to his land, special things that would show the richness of Adansi's culture. He walked through the marketplace slowly, examining everything with careful eyes. When he came to Oma's stall, he stopped. He picked up cloth after cloth, holding them up to the light, running his fingers over the intricate patterns. Finally, he spoke. "These are magnificent. I will buy 20 of your finest cloths. Name your price." The marketplace erupted in whispers. 20 cloths. That was more than most weavers sold in an entire season. Oma's hands trembled as she wrapped the cloths carefully, hardly believing her good fortune. Efua was at her stall nearby, arranging her pots. She heard the commotion. She saw the trader counting out payment. She saw the crowd gathering around Oma, congratulating her, touching her shoulder, celebrating her success. And Efua smiled. She walked over to Oma, her face bright with joy, and embraced her friend tightly. "Sister of my heart," Efua exclaimed. "Look at this blessing. I am so happy for you." Oma hugged her back, tears streaming down her face. "Efua, can you believe it? 20 cloths. This will help me repair my mother's roof and buy new materials and—" "You deserve every bit of it," Efua said, her smile never wavering. "Come, let us celebrate tonight. Bring your earnings to my compound, and I will prepare a feast worthy of this moment." That night, Oma came to Efua's home carrying a small portion of her earnings, intending to share her joy with the one person she trusted most in the world. They ate together, drank palm wine together, and laughed together under the stars. But after Oma left, Efua sat alone in the darkness, and the smile finally cracked. Everyone celebrates her, Efua whispered to the night. Everyone sees her. But who sees me? Who celebrates my pots that carry their water, that store their grain, that hold the very food they eat? I am invisible. From that night forward, something shifted in Efua. She began to speak about Oma in ways that seemed harmless but carried poison in their sweetness. When other women in the marketplace praised Oma's latest design, Efua would lean in and say with a concerned expression, "Yes, it is beautiful, but have you noticed how she has been using thinner thread lately? I worry the cloth will not last as long. I only mention it because I care about her reputation." The women would nod slowly, looking at each other. Seeds of doubt, planted. When young apprentices asked about learning from Oma, Efua would say with a sympathetic smile, "Oma is wonderful, truly. But between you and me, she has become so busy with her wealthy customers that she hardly has time for teaching anymore. She has changed a bit, you know. Success does that to people sometimes." The apprentices would walk away, their excitement dimmed. More seeds, planted. When men in the marketplace spoke of Oma as a good potential wife, Efua would laugh gently and say, "Oh yes, Oma is lovely. Though I have heard she is so devoted to her work that she barely keeps her compound clean. A man wants a wife who can balance everything, does he not?" The men would stroke their chins thoughtfully. Seeds everywhere, growing in the darkness. And through it all, Efua smiled at Oma. She smiled when they met at the well. She smiled when they sat together under the Iroko tree. She smiled when Oma confided her hopes and fears and dreams. Oma, trusting as the dawn, never suspected. How could she? Efua was her oldest friend, her sister in all but blood. When Oma noticed that people seemed less warm to her lately, less quick to greet her, she confided in Efua. "I do not understand it," Oma said one evening, her voice troubled. "It feels as though people are avoiding me. Have I done something to offend the marketplace?" Efua reached out and squeezed Oma's hand, her face full of concern. "Oh, sister, people can be strange. Perhaps they are jealous of your success. You know how envy makes people behave oddly. But I am here. I will always be here for you." Oma smiled gratefully, feeling blessed to have such a loyal friend. The poison continued to spread. Efua began to accidentally let slip small secrets that Oma had shared in confidence. She would say, "Oh, I probably should not mention this, but..." And then share something personal that Oma had trusted her with, always framing it with concern, always wearing that smile. When Oma struggled with a difficult pattern and expressed frustration to Efua, Efua later told others, "Poor Oma is having trouble with her work. She is overwhelmed. I worry about her, truly." When Oma shared her fear that the wealthy trader might not return, Efua whispered to others, "Oma is desperate for another big sale. She is not as confident as she appears." Every confidence became a weapon. Every vulnerability became ammunition. And Efua deployed them all while smiling, while embracing Oma, while calling her "sister of my heart." Months passed. Oma noticed that her sales had decreased. People still bought her cloth, but not with the same enthusiasm. Conversations would stop when she approached. Invitations to gatherings became less frequent. She felt as though she was walking through a fog, unable to understand what had changed. She worked harder, created more beautiful patterns, lowered her prices. Nothing seemed to help. The invisible wall between her and the community grew thicker. "I do not know what is happening," she told Efua one evening, her voice breaking. "It is as if everyone has turned away from me. Even my apprentices have stopped coming. What have I done wrong?" Efua held her as she cried, stroking her hair, making soothing sounds. Dear sister. People are fickle. They build you up only to tear you down. But I see your worth. I have always seen it. You have me, and that is what matters." And Oma believed her. She clung to that friendship like a drowning person clings to driftwood, not realizing that the wood itself was pulling her under. Then came the day of the great festival. Every craftsperson in Adansi was invited to display their finest work before the chief and his council. It was an honor and an opportunity. The chief's household needed many items, and whoever impressed him most would receive royal patronage for the entire year. Oma prepared for weeks. She created a cloth so intricate, so breathtaking, that even she stood back in awe when it was complete. The pattern showed the story of Adansi itself, its founding, its growth, its people working together in harmony. Every thread told part of the tale. Efua saw the cloth when she visited Oma's compound. For a moment, just a moment, her mask slipped. Her eyes went hard, and her jaw clenched. But then the smile returned, quick as a lizard's tongue. "It is beautiful," Efua said softly. "Truly beautiful. You will certainly win the patronage." "I hope so," Oma replied, carefully folding the precious cloth. "This could change everything for me. For both of us, really. If I receive royal patronage, I can help you expand your pottery work too. We could work together on projects for the chief's household." "How kind of you," Efua said, her smile never wavering. "You have always been generous." The night before the festival, Efua could not sleep. She lay on her mat, staring at the ceiling, listening to the night sounds. In her mind, she saw the chief praising Oma. She saw the entire marketplace celebrating Oma's success once again. She saw herself standing in the background, invisible, just another face in the crowd. The seed of envy, watered for so long, had grown into a thorny tree that filled her entire chest. Before dawn, while darkness still covered Adansi, Efua rose from her mat. She moved quietly through the sleepy marketplace, her feet knowing the path to Oma's compound without needing light to guide them. Oma's door was not locked. In Adansi, people did not lock their doors against friends. Efua entered silently. In the darkness, she found Oma's workroom. She found the festival cloth, carefully laid out and ready. And from a wrapper, she pulled out a small pot of palm oil mixed with red dye, the kind that would never come out of fabric, the kind that would ruin cloth permanently. Her hand trembled as she held it over the fabric. "Just pour it," a voice in her head whispered. "Pour it, and you will have your chance. Pour it, and the praise will finally come to you instead." But another voice, quieter, spoke too. "This is your friend. This is Oma, who shared her first earnings with you, who wept at your mother's funeral, who has always called you sister." Efua stood frozen in the darkness, the pot shaking in her hands. Sweat ran down her face. Her breath came fast and shallow. Then she heard footsteps. Oma was waking up. Panic seized Efua. Without thinking, she poured the oil across the cloth and fled into the darkness. When Oma lit her lamp and entered her workroom, the scream that tore from her throat woke half the marketplace. The cloth, her beautiful cloth, her masterpiece, was ruined. Red oil soaked through the intricate patterns, obliterating months of work. The story of Adansi was now just a blotted, stained mess. People came running. They found Oma on her knees, weeping over the destroyed fabric. They found the empty pot on the floor, a pot that everyone recognized because only one person in Adansi made pots of that particular size and shape. Efua's pots. When the elders brought Efua before the gathering at dawn, she still tried to smile. She still tried to deny. "I would never hurt Oma. She is my dearest friend. Someone must have stolen one of my pots to make me look guilty." But one of the night watchers had seen a figure slipping through the marketplace. "I did not see the face," the old man said, "but I saw the gait. I have watched that walk for many years. It was you, Efua. I am certain." Still, Efua denied it. Still, she smiled. "You are all mistaken. You are all enough." The voice came from an elder woman, Nana Abina, the oldest in the marketplace. She had watched Oma and Efua grow from girls to women. She had seen everything with eyes that age had made wise. "Efua," Nana Abina said quietly, "I have watched you for many seasons now. I have watched your smile, and I have watched what happens when you think no one is looking. I have heard the words you plant like thorns in a garden. I have seen how you water the tree of envy in your heart until it choked out everything else." Efua's smile finally crumbled. Tears ran down her face, but they were not tears of remorse, they were tears of rage and frustration. Why should she have everything? Efua shouted. Why does everyone love her and ignore me? We started together. I work just as hard. But no one sees me. No one celebrates my pots. No one stops to marvel at what I create. It is always Oma, Oma, Oma. Always her. The marketplace fell silent. Oma, still kneeling by her ruined cloth, looked up at her friend, her former friend, with an expression of such hurt that several people turned away, unable to bear it. I would have shared everything with you, Oma whispered. I did share everything with you. Every joy, every success, every coin I earned. I celebrated your pots. I sent customers to you. I told everyone that my friend Efua made the strongest vessels in all the land. What more could I have done? You could have been less. Efua screamed. You could have shone less brightly so that I could be seen too. You could have failed sometimes so that I could succeed. You could have been smaller so that I could be bigger. Nana Abina shook her head slowly. Child, that is not how light works. Another person's brightness does not diminish your own unless you choose to stand in their shadow instead of finding your own sun. The chief's representative, who had come to investigate the disturbance, spoke then. Efua, daughter of the potter's line, you have committed a grave offense. You have destroyed another craft person's work out of envy. You have spread poison through our marketplace with your words. And worst of all, you have betrayed the sacred bond of friendship. What do you have to say? Efua looked around at all the faces staring at her. She looked at Oma, broken and weeping. She looked at her own hands, still stained with red dye. And finally, she told the truth. I hated her, Efua said, her voice flat. Not all the time. Sometimes I loved her truly. But more and more, I hated her. I hated that she made it look easy. I hated that people loved her without her even trying. I hated that I felt small beside her, even though she never tried to make me feel small. I hated my own hate, but I could not stop it. It grew and grew until there was nothing else left inside me. She fell to her knees. I am sorry, Oma. I am so sorry. You deserved a better friend. You deserve the friend I pretended to be. The chief's representative conferred with the elders. The punishment was decided swiftly. Efua would be banished from the marketplace for 1 full year. She could continue her craft, but she would have to sell her wares in distant towns. She would have to rebuild her reputation from nothing. And she would have to learn that another person's success was not her failure. When the year is complete, Nana Abina said, you may return if you have learned what true friendship means. Not the friendship that smiles while holding daggers. Not the friendship that celebrates with the mouth while the heart plots destruction. But the friendship that knows there is room for everyone to shine, and that your sister's light makes the world brighter for all of us, including you. Efua left Adansi that very day, carrying only what she could manage on her head. Some say she walked with her head held high, defiant to the end. Others say she walked with tears streaming down her face, finally understanding what she had destroyed. Oma watched her go. Part of her wanted to run after Efua, to forgive her, to beg her to stay. But another part, the part that had been wounded so deeply, knew that some betrayals need distance before they can be healed, if they can be healed at all. The festival went on without Oma's cloth. She had no masterpiece to show. But word of what had happened had spread quickly, and when she arrived at the festival ground with nothing but her loom and her remaining thread, the chief himself came to speak with her. Oma, weaver of stories, the chief said, I have heard what happened. I have heard too of the poison that was spread through whispers, poison you did not deserve but endured with grace. Show me something, anything you have created, and I would judge your skill fairly. Oma had brought only a simple wrapper, one she had woven for everyday use. It had no elaborate pattern, no grand story. It was just clean lines and honest work. The chief examined it carefully. He looked at the evenness of the weave, the precision of the edges, the quality of the thread. Then he smiled, a true smile, not like the ones Efua had given. This is the work of a master, he said. Someone who does not need to prove themselves with complexity because their skill shows in every simple thread. You have the royal patronage for this year, Oma. Not because I pity what you have endured, but because your work speaks for itself. The marketplace erupted in celebration. People who had been cold to Oma, people who had believed Efua's whispered poison, suddenly saw clearly. Some came to apologize. Some simply came to celebrate. And Oma received them all with grace, though her heart was still healing from the betrayal. In the seasons that followed, Oma's work flourished. The patronage allowed her to take on apprentices again, to experiment with new patterns, to repair her mother's roof and much more. She became not just successful, but truly happy, the kind of happiness that comes from doing what you love and being surrounded by genuine support. But there was a space in her heart, a friend-shaped hole, that remained tender. When people asked about Efua, Oma would say simply, "She taught me something valuable, to look behind the smiles, to value those who celebrate me without condition, and to know that true friendship does not measure itself against your success." As for Efua, stories trickled back to Adansi during that year. Some travelers said she was working hard in distant markets, her pots improving as she focused on her own craft rather than comparing it to others. Others said she had begun to speak more kindly, having learned what her bitter words had cost her. When the year ended, Efua did return to Adansi. She walked into the marketplace on a morning when the sun painted everything gold. She had aged in that year, not in her face, but in her eyes. There was a weight there, a gravity that had not existed before. She did not go to Oma's stall immediately. Instead, she set up her own small space and began to walk, quietly, without fanfare. Her pots had improved. She had learned new techniques in her travels, and her vessels were more beautiful than ever. People approached cautiously at first, remembering what had happened. But Efua did not smile constantly as she once had. She smiled only when she meant it, and people found they trusted these rare, genuine smiles more than they had ever trusted the constant ones. Weeks passed. Efua and Oma saw each other in the marketplace but did not speak. The wound was still too fresh, the memory too sharp. Then one day, a young girl approached Oma's stall with tears streaming down her face. Her mother was ill, the girl explained, and they needed both cloth and a pot for a healing ceremony, but they had very little money. Oma looked at the coins in the girl's small hand, barely enough for either item alone. She glanced across the marketplace to where Efua worked. "Come with me," Oma said gently. She led the girl to Efua's stall. Efua looked up, surprised, her hand stealing on the clay. "This child needs our help," Oma said simply. "Both of ours." For a moment, Efua just stared. Then, slowly, she nodded. She selected her finest small pot, one that had taken her days to craft and paint. Oma returned to her stall and chose a length of her softest, most comforting cloth. They gave both items to the girl, accepting only what she could afford and splitting the small payment between them. After the girl left, joyous and grateful, Efua and Oma stood facing each other in the marketplace. Around them, life continued, traders calling, children playing, the smell of cooking fires and fresh rain mixing in the air. "I do not expect forgiveness," Efua said quietly. "I do not even know if I deserve to ask for it. What I did was the act of someone who was drowning," Oma finished. "I have had a year to think about it, Efua. A year to be angry, to hurt, to wonder why. And I realize now that you were not trying to destroy me. You were trying to save yourself from feelings you did not know how to handle. That does not excuse what I did." "No," Oma agreed. "It does not. But perhaps it explains it. An explanation is where forgiveness can begin to take root, if we water it with truth instead of bitterness." Efua's eyes filled with tears, real tears, the kind that come from deep within, not from rage or frustration, but from genuine remorse and hope. "I have learned something in my exile," Efua said. "I learned that envy is a choice. Every day, I chose to focus on what I lacked rather than what I had. I chose to measure myself against you rather than measure myself against my own potential. I chose to believe that there was not enough success, enough love, enough recognition for both of us. And those choices poisoned everything. And now?" Oma asked. "Now I choose differently. Every day, I wake up and choose to celebrate what others achieve, because their success does not diminish mine. I choose to work on my craft for the joy of it, not for the praise. I choose to smile only when I mean it, so that my smiles become trustworthy again. Oma was quiet for a long moment. The marketplace bustled around them, but in their small space, time seemed suspended. I cannot give you back what we had, Oma finally said. That trust, that easy friendship, it is gone, broken like the cloth you ruined. But perhaps, if you mean what you say, if you truly choose differently, perhaps we can build something new. Not what we were, but what we could be. Not false sisters, but honest acquaintances who grow toward friendship again, one true smile at a time. Efua nodded, not smiling, tears still flowing. That is more than I deserve. Thank you. They did not embrace. They did not laugh together as they once had. But they acknowledged each other with a small nod, and that acknowledgement was built on truth rather than pretense. In the seasons that followed, Efua did choose differently. When other craftspeople succeeded, she congratulated them sincerely. When apprentices came seeking advice, she helped them without directing them away from better teachers. When envy whispered in her ear, because it still did, sometimes, she acknowledged the feeling but did not act on it. And slowly, very slowly, something remarkable happened. As she stopped comparing herself to others, as she focused on her own craft with genuine joy rather than desperate competition, her work began to shine with a light all its own. People started stopping at her store not just because they needed pots, but because they appreciated the artistry in them. Efua discovered what Nana Abina had tried to tell her, that standing in someone else's shadow was a choice, and stepping into her own sun was also a choice. As for Oma, she continued to weave her stories into cloth, and she continued to be celebrated for her work. But she was more careful now about who she trusted with her heart. She was kinder to those who struggled with envy, having seen how it could consume someone from within. And she learned that sometimes the hardest thing to weave is not a complex pattern, but the threads of forgiveness. Years later, when young craftspeople asked about the friendship between Oma and Efua, the elders would tell this story. They would tell it not as a tale of villains and heroes, but as a story of two women, one who learned what true success meant, and one who learned what it cost to betray it. Be careful whose smile you trust, they would say. Not because all smiles are false, but because sometimes people smile with their teeth while their hearts hide daggers. And be careful about becoming the person who smiles that way. Because in the end, the person you hurt most with your envy is yourself. The story would end with Nana Abina's wisdom: there is room under the sun for everyone to shine. Your friend's light does not diminish yours, unless you choose to close your eyes to your own brightness while staring at theirs. And in Adansi's marketplace, under the same great Iroko tree where Oma and Efua had once learned their craft as girls, new apprentices would listen to this tale. They would watch Oma weaving at her loom, creating beauty with patient hands. They would watch Efua shaping clay into vessels, her face peaceful in concentration. They would see two women who worked in the same marketplace but would never be as close as they once were. Two women who had learned that some betrayals leave scars that never fully fade, but also that those scars can teach us to be wiser, more careful, and more intentional about the friendships we build and the way we treat those we claim to love. Not every smile is born from love, the children would learn. Some smiles hide daggers. But the story also taught them this, that recognizing false smiles protect your heart, but learning not to give false smiles protect your soul. And in a world where both lessons matter, perhaps that is the wisdom worth carrying forward, to be neither the betrayer nor the betrayed, but the person whose smile, when given, is genuine as sunrise and trustworthy as the earth beneath our feet. True friendship celebrates without condition. Envy is a seed that grows only when we water it with comparison and bitterness. There is room under the sun for everyone to shine. Another person's success does not diminish your own unless you choose to stand in their shadow. Be careful who you trust with your heart, but be even more careful that you are worthy of others' trust. Not every smile is genuine, and the smile that hides betrayal wounds both the betrayed and the betrayer. Choose to shine your own light rather than trying to dim someone else's.